Nathan Cole was an expert hiker. He planned every trip with care. He checked weather reports twice, packed light but smart, and followed trail rules without exception. People trusted him because he never took risks just for excitement. Early one morning, Nathan arrived at a remote trail known simply as Ridge Path. The place was quiet, wrapped in tall trees and thin fog. At the entrance stood a wooden post with a small metal roof. Beneath it hung a logbook, its pages worn by time and weather. Nathan removed his gloves before writing. His name was neat. The date was clear. His handwriting showed no hurry, no shaking. He even paused to draw a straight line under his entry, a habit he always kept. Then he closed the book carefully and stepped onto the trail. That was the last confirmed sighting of Nathan Cole. By nightfall, he did not return. At first, no one panicked. Nathan was experienced. He knew how to manage time. But when morning came and his car still sat alone in the parking area, concern turned into alarm. Trail volunteers began searching the path. About a mile in, they found Nathan's backpack resting beside a large stone. It was placed upright, not thrown or dropped. The zipper was fully closed. Inside, everything was in order. Map folded, food untouched, flashlight unused. The water bottle was full.
There were no signs of a struggle, no torn fabric, no scattered items. It looked as if someone had set the bag down carefully, planning to return. Park Ranger Helen Ward arrived shortly after. She had worked in these forests for over 10 years. She had seen careless hikers, injured hikers, even lost hikers. This scene felt different. Helen crouched beside the backpack. She noticed the ground around it. A few clear boot prints led up to the stone. Then they stopped. Not faded, not covered by leaves, just stopped, as if Nathan had stood there for a long time without moving. Helen followed the trail slowly, her eyes scanning every detail. A few steps away, she noticed the wooden trail marker. At first glance, it looked normal, but when she leaned closer, she saw something strange. The arrow pointed slightly away from the main path, only by a few degrees, just enough to guide someone wrong, easy to miss. Helen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool air. The forest told no stories. No birds called. No wind moved the leaves. Everything was quiet, but not peaceful. It felt arranged, too clean, too calm. Helen stood up and looked deeper into the trees, toward the direction the marker pointed. For the first time since she became a ranger, she had the uneasy feeling that this trail had not simply lost a man, it had taken him. A trail only becomes dangerous when someone decides where it should lead.
Helen walked the trail alone the next morning. She left before sunrise, when the forest still held the cold of night and sound carried too far. This was the hour when details showed themselves, before wind, before hikers, before excuses. She stopped where Nathan's backpack had been found. The ground had been marked with small flags, but nothing else had been disturbed. Helen stepped carefully, placing her boots beside the prints already documented. A few yards ahead, she noticed a branch bent low over the trail. It wasn't broken, the bark wasn't cracked. It looked as if someone had passed beneath it slowly, pushing it aside with care. Not running, not falling, just moving through. Helen straightened and followed the direction of the bend. Further along, the dirt told another story. Nathan's boot prints were clear, deep heel, even stride, but mixed with them were other prints, similar size, similar weight, but the pattern was wrong. The sole design didn't match Nathan's boots. The prints overlapped his, sometimes stepping directly where he had stepped. Whoever made them hadn't tried to hide their path, they had followed it. Helen felt a tightening in her chest.
At a narrow turn, where the trail curved between two large trees, she saw a faint scuff mark. It was small, easy to miss. A sideways scrape, like a boot had dragged for half a second. Not from slipping, more like stopping suddenly. She stood there longer than she meant to, listening. The forest answered with nothing. Later that morning, Helen checked the trail camera mounted high on a nearby tree. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. She watched Nathan appear on screen, walking at his usual steady pace. He reached the trail marker. Experienced people don't vanish by accident. They stop because something makes them pause. Then he slowed. He stopped. Nathan looked left toward the deeper trees. Then he looked back at the sign. He stepped closer, as if reading it again. The timestamp showed he stood there for nearly 2 full minutes, too long for a simple glance. Helen leaned closer to the screen. Nathan's posture was calm, but something in the way he held his shoulders felt cautious. He wasn't confused, he was considering. Then he stepped out of frame, toward the direction the marker pointed. The footage showed no storm, no sudden movement, no sign of injury. Helen rewound the clip and watched it again, and again. Back at the ranger station, she reviewed Nathan's phone records. The last signal came from Ridge Path, less than an hour after he entered. The phone had been turned off manually. That bothered her. Nathan always kept his phone on. Even when the battery was low, he left it powered in case of emergency. Turning it off early went against everything he believed about safety. In the afternoon, Helen spoke with other hikers who had been near the entrance that day. Most remembered nothing unusual, just the quiet, the fog, the early light. Then one woman hesitated. She said she had seen a man near the logbook. He hadn't signed in, he hadn't checked his gear. He had just stood there, watching the trail. When she passed him, he stepped aside without speaking. She assumed he decided not to hike and left. Another hiker confirmed it, a man near the entrance, standing still, leaving without entering Ridge Path. Helen wrote the details down slowly. A man who didn't hike, a marker pointing slightly wrong, footprints that didn't belong, a careful hiker who stopped, waited, and then chose to turn. That evening, Helen returned to the trail one last time. She stood at the marker and looked down the false path. The forest swallowed the direction quickly. The ground beyond showed no clear trail, only shadows and narrow gaps between trees. Helen no longer believed Nathan had made a simple mistake. Someone or something had changed the path, quietly, and Nathan had noticed.
Helen waited until the forest was empty before she moved the trail marker. She turned it slowly, back to the angle she had memorized from the footage, just a few degrees off, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. Then she stepped in the direction it pointed and left the main trail behind. The ground changed almost immediately. The dirt was softer. Leaves lay thicker, undisturbed by regular boots. Branches leaned inward, hiding the way forward. This was not a trail meant to be found. After several minutes, Helen noticed faint signs of use. Pressed grass, a scuffed rock, a narrow line where feet had passed more than once. An old service path emerged beneath the overgrowth, long forgotten by maps and maintenance crews. It led downhill. At the end of the path stood a small shelter, barely visible through the trees. Its wood had darkened with age, and moss climbed the corners like slow-moving vines. The door hung crooked, but it was intact. Helen approached carefully and knocked once. There was a pause. Then the door opened. Nathan Cole stood in the doorway. He was thinner, dirt-streaked, and clearly exhausted, but alive. His eyes were alert, calm, almost relieved. Helen let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Inside the shelter, the air smelled of damp wood and old dust. Nathan had arranged his gear neatly along one wall. Notes were spread across a flat surface, weighed down by a stone. "I knew someone would follow," Nathan said quietly. He explained everything without panic, without drama. Over the past several weeks, he had noticed small changes along Ridge Path. Markers rotated slightly, distances felt wrong, turns appeared sooner or later than expected. Nothing dangerous, just enough to cause doubt. Nathan believed someone was watching, testing, seeing which hikers followed signs without thinking. That morning, when he reached the shifted marker, he decided not to turn back. He followed it, not out of fear, but curiosity. He wanted to understand the pattern before someone less careful did. His phone lost signal within minutes. Rather than risk moving blindly, he followed the hidden service path and found the shelter. He stayed there, resting, recording details, measuring angles, and marking times. The extra footprints were his own, walking back and forth, checking distances, confirming the marker's alignment. By the time search efforts began, Nathan was already planning how to explain everything, assuming someone would notice the signs the way he had. Helen listened, her expression unreadable. The investigation ended quietly. The altered markers were corrected, the service path was sealed and removed from future maps. No official statement mentioned testing or watchers or intent, just a temporary trail error. Nathan declined interviews. He returned to hiking, but only on trails he knew well. Helen returned to her work, yet something stayed with her. Now, every time she passes a sign, she checks its angle. She steps back. She looks at the ground. She asks herself who last touched it and why. Because sometimes a trail doesn't lose people, it leads them somewhere else.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.